Right when you think family means safety, life proves you wrong. That day at Lake Tahoe, I learned that evil doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the people your daughter calls family. My name is Eleanor Hayes, and this story, my story, begins with laughter, wind, and the sound of my daughter's scream echoing over the water. The air at Van Door's lake house smelled of pine and money. It was beautiful in a cold, lifeless way, like a photograph that looks perfect until you realize everyone in it is pretending. The house stood by the water like a king's fortress, proud and heartless. Every corner spoke of wealth, but not warmth. The grass was too perfect, the windows too clean, the smiles too fake. I sat on the porch, watching my daughter, Lena. She was moving from one person to another, pouring drinks, laughing when they laughed. But I knew my child's laugh. It wasn't joy. It was fear in disguise. Her husband, Preston, sat beside his father, Garrett, both of them already drunk. They looked at her as if she was something they owned. Every time she poured their scotch, I could see that flicker in her eyes, a small, dying light. She had begged me to come. "Mom, please. They want to see the whole family this time." She always said that, always hoping they'd love her, always believing she could make them happy. I only came for her, because I knew what kind of men they were, men who smiled with their mouths but not with their eyes. Garrett, the father, was a man who thought the world belonged to him. Preston, my son-in-law, was the mirror of that arrogance, spoiled, cruel, and proud of it. When they laughed, it wasn't because something was funny. It was because someone was weaker. As the sun dipped behind the pine trees, Garrett looked across the table and said, "Why is our little city girl so bundled up? You afraid of a little cold, Lena?" The wind was sharp that day. The lake shimmered like glass. "It's chilly, Mr. Garrett," she said softly. "I just don't want to catch a cold." Preston smirked. Back in my day, girls weren't scared of a little wind. They could swim in ice water. Garrett laughed. "Maybe we should test that, huh?" Their voices were light, playful on the surface, but I could feel something dark beneath. I spoke up, trying to stop it before it began. "Leave her alone," I said. Preston's grin widened. He hated when I interfered. "Relax, Eleanor. We're just having fun. Right, honey?" Lena forced a smile. "Of course, Mom. Everything's fine." But everything wasn't fine. The tension in the air was thick. I could feel it like a storm about to break. Garrett stood up suddenly. "Come on, Preston. Show the city girl what real water feels like." Lena laughed nervously. "Dad, please don't." He reached for her arm. Preston joined in, pretending it was a joke, but I could see it wasn't. I stood up, my heart pounding. "Stop. You're drunk. Don't you dare." They didn't even look at me. To them, I was invisible. They dragged her toward the pier. Lena tried to play along, still laughing weakly, still pretending. Okay, okay. Stop. I'll go if you stop pulling me." But her laughter cracked. It turned into short, panicked gasps. The pier stretched into the lake like a dark finger pointing to hell. The water below was black and still. Garrett's voice boomed. "Go on, show us you're not afraid." "Please, don't," she screamed. I ran toward them, but Preston shoved me so hard I fell to the ground, and then it happened. They pushed her, a splash, then silence. The water swallowed her whole. I waited for her to come up. 1 second, 2, 3. "Come on, Lena," I whispered. "Please." Garrett laughed first, then Preston. Their laughter echoed across the water like something from a nightmare. "She can swim," Preston shouted. "Stop your drama, Eleanor." But she didn't come up. Not yet. When she finally did, it was only for a moment. Her face pale, blood mixing with the water, her eyes empty. Then she sank again. I screamed. I screamed so loud my throat burned. "Help." She hit her head. "Help her." They looked at me like I was a crazy woman. "Stop the act," Garrett said. "She'll climb out." Then they walked away. Walked away. Their black SUV rolled down the gravel road, and I was left standing on the shore, my daughter dying in front of me. The sound of their engine faded, and only the wind remained. I stared at the dark ripples. My heart froze. My legs wouldn't move. Then I heard the faint hum of a motor. A fisherman, somewhere near the reeds, was heading toward us. I waved my arms, pointing to the water. He didn't understand at first. Then he saw my face and turned his boat around. Within seconds, he was there. He didn't waste time. He grabbed a long hook and searched the water. When he pulled her up, I saw her face, blue, lifeless. Something inside me shattered, but not into tears, into ice. I called 911. My voice was steady, calm, almost mechanical. As I gave the address, the fisherman pressed his lips to her mouth, breathing for her, fighting for her. I stood there like a statue, remembering everything: her first scraped knee, her school dress, her wedding day. I had stayed silent all these years. I smiled for those monsters, laughed at their cruel jokes, all because I wanted my daughter to be happy. What a fool I was. The ambulance arrived. They covered her in a silver blanket, shouting words I couldn't hear. I watched them load her in, the blue lights painting the water. Then I made a decision that would change everything. I took out my phone. My fingers no longer trembled with fear. They trembled with purpose. I scrolled down to a number I hadn't dialed in 10 years. Isaac. My brother. My last resort. He had been a journalist once. Brilliant. Ruthless. The kind of man who could destroy someone's life with a single headline. He had lost everything because of that. But now, I needed exactly that kind of man. I pressed call. He picked up on the fourth ring. His voice was deep and rough. Yeah, who is this? Isaac, I whispered. It's me. Silence. I could almost feel him straighten up, sense the danger in my tone. I'm listening, he said. I looked down the road where Garrett and Preston had driven away. I could still hear their laughter in my head. They're heading home now, I said quietly. Do what you do best. I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. The wind was cold, but my chest was colder. That night in the hospital, I sat by my daughter's bed. Machines breathed for her. Tubes filled her veins. She looked so small, so fragile. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Fear was gone. In its place was something sharp and focused. When Preston called, I answered. She's alive, I said. He froze. He tried to speak, but I hung up. The doctor came out later. Severe hypothermia, he said. But she'll live. I nodded. I already knew. And as I walked out into the cold hospital corridor, I whispered to myself, so will justice. Because monsters like Garrett and Preston never stop. They only stop when someone stronger makes them. And this time, that someone was going to be me. The next morning, as the sun rose over the lake, the same lake that almost took my daughter, I stood by the window. My reflection looked back at me, a mother reborn from fire and ice. They thought they could drown her and walk away laughing. They had no idea that when they threw my daughter into that lake, they threw themselves in too. Because when my brother Isaac starts digging, graves don't stay closed for long. That morning, the hospital hallway smelled like bleach and burnt coffee. I sat outside Lena's room with my hands folded in my lap, watching the pale light crawl up the walls. She was still unconscious, but her heart monitor beeped steadily. That sound was the only thing keeping me anchored. Each soft beep was proof she was still here. I hadn't slept. My mind replayed the same image again and again, her body sinking under that black water, her hair floating like seaweed. And then the laughter. That terrible echoing laughter that still lived in my ears. The phone on the chair beside me buzzed. Isaac. I found something, he said, skipping greetings as always. His voice was calm, but I could hear the storm beneath it. You're not going to like this, Eleanor. I pressed the phone to my ear. Tell me. He sighed softly. Remember I told you once that Garrett Van Doren was a name I'd heard before? I was right. 22 years ago, there was a boating accident. Same lake. His business partner drowned. case closed in a week. No body recovered. Sound familiar? My stomach clenched. He killed him? I whispered. I can't prove it yet, but the patterns are there. The same arrogance. The same cover-up. I'm heading to see the retired detective who handled that case. Name's Healy. Old man. Lives up north with bees and guilt. I leaned back against the cold wall. You think Garrett bought his silence? Isaac chuckled darkly. No, Eleanor. He rented it. For a lifetime. Before I could respond, a nurse stepped out of Lena's room. She's awake, she said quietly. I ended the call and rushed inside. Lena looked fragile, her skin pale against the white sheets. When her eyes met mine, a single tear slid down her cheek. Mom, she whispered, voice trembling. I'm here, I said, taking her cold hand in mine. Did Preston call? Yes, I said softly. He called. What did he say? I looked straight into her eyes. He said I was being dramatic. Her lip trembled, but she didn't cry. She just turned her head toward the window, and I knew something inside her had broken too. The illusion was gone. Hours later, while she slept, I walked out into the hospital courtyard. The air was crisp, the smell of wet leaves strong. I called Isaac again. He answered on the first ring. Got him talking, he said, his voice rough like gravel. Old man Healy confessed. He was paid off. They showed him a picture of his daughter and handed him a thick envelope. He signed everything Garrett needed. The man's been carrying that sin like a stone for 20 years. My fingers tightened around the phone. And the partner? The one who drowned? Malcolm Pierce, Isaac said. Had a son. About 10 years old back then. I tracked him down, works as a mechanic now. Still keeps letters his father wrote before he died. In those letters, Pierce accused Garrett of stealing from him. He was about to go to the district attorney. A week later, he was dead. Isaac paused. The world called it an accident, but you and I know better. I closed my eyes, breathing slowly. Every word he spoke filled me with a deeper, colder certainty. Garrett Van Doren wasn't just cruel. He was a monster who'd lived too long without consequences. What are you going to do with it? I asked. I'm going to write, he said, and this time, nobody's shutting me down. I looked back at the hospital. Be careful, Isaac. I always am. He laughed softly. You just make sure your daughter lives long enough to see what happens next. The next morning, Lena was stronger. She could sit up. She smiled weakly when she saw me bringing her coffee. Mom, you look tired. I'm fine, I lied. You just rest. She reached for my hand. They didn't mean to hurt me, Mom. It was just a joke gone wrong. I froze. That's what trauma does. It teaches you to defend your abusers. I looked at her and said nothing. She needed time to see the truth. Later that day, a nurse came in holding a large bouquet of white lilies. The sweet scent filled the room instantly, almost choking. These just arrived, the nurse said cheerfully. I stared at the flowers. My chest went cold. A white envelope was tucked between the stems. I pulled it out and unfolded the thick card. My dear, let's not let your mother's theatrics spoil our fun. Preston's handwriting. I folded the card neatly and slipped it into my pocket. Then I turned to the nurse. Throw them away, I said. But they're beautiful. My daughter is allergic, I interrupted. The nurse nodded, confused, and carried them out. When she was gone, I looked at Lena sleeping peacefully and whispered, No, my love. It's not over yet. That night, the world outside the hospital windows was quiet. Inside, I sat in a small waiting area with a notebook on my lap. I began to write. Not notes, not plans, just names. Garrett, Preston, Van Doren Industries, dates, incidents. Every cruel smile, every humiliation, every scar they left. I wasn't a violent woman. I had never even raised my voice much. But that night, as I wrote their names, I realized something powerful. Revenge doesn't always come with guns and fire. Sometimes it comes with silence and patience. In the morning, the news broke. Isaac called again. His voice was electric like lightning. "It's happening, Eleanor," he said. Its phone's been ringing nonstop. Someone tipped off his old friends about the story I'm writing. They're running scared. You sent it out? Not yet. But they know I have it. And that's worse. I walked to the window, looking down at the parking lot below. You're playing with fire, Isaac. He chuckled. Fire's the only thing that cleans. That afternoon, Lena sat quietly, staring at the TV. The news talked about business scandals, corruption, and power. She wasn't really watching, just listening to the rhythm of words she didn't want to hear. "Mom," she said suddenly, "do you think people ever really change?" I looked at her and smiled faintly. No. But sometimes the truth changes what happens to them. That night, Isaac called again. I could hear traffic in the background. He's panicking, he said. He's calling people, offering money. They're hanging up. His empire's cracking. What about Preston? He's still too stupid to realize what's coming. I exhaled slowly. Let him laugh. Let him pour another drink. The following day, the hospital discharged Lena. The doctor said she was lucky. I didn't believe in luck anymore. We went home to her empty house, the one that felt like a museum of pain. She walked through the rooms like a ghost, touching furniture, photographs, books. I thought this was home, she whispered. It never was, I said softly. We stayed there that night in silence. I made soup. She ate a few spoons and went to bed early. Around midnight, I sat in the kitchen alone, staring at the dark window. My phone buzzed again. A message from Isaac. He's cracking. The mayor's next. He'll call you soon. Don't answer. I didn't understand at first, but an hour later the phone rang. The caller ID showed private number. I let it ring twice, then answered. Mrs. Hayes, a deep voice said. This is Mayor Dalton. I need to talk to you about your family situation. I have no family situation, I said quietly. He hesitated. I understand your brother's been making certain accusations. I smiled bitterly. Then you should understand I'm not the one to silence. I'd advise you to. I hung up. My hands were steady. For the first time in my life, I felt power. The next morning, Isaac sent me a short text. He knows it's us. Garrett's calls to his friends had turned desperate. Nobody wants to be seen talking to him. His world, built on fear, respect, and wealth, was collapsing. Meanwhile, Lena was getting stronger. She could walk around now. She smiled more, though her eyes still carried the weight of what happened. Mom, she said one morning, what if we just left? Went somewhere far away. Start over. Not yet, I said softly. Not until everything is finished. That afternoon, I went to the hospital again. Not for Lena, but to visit a place I hadn't seen in years, the old hospital library. It was quiet, forgotten, dusty. I began organizing books on the shelves like I used to. It helped me think. As I arranged them alphabetically, my phone rang again. Isaac. He's trying to find me, he said. Sent people to my old address. Don't worry, I'm long gone. But this confirms everything. You're still going to publish? Tomorrow morning, he said. National press. Once it's out, there's no taking it back. I placed a worn book on the shelf and said, do it. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, listening to Lena breathe softly in the next room. I thought of all the years I'd stayed quiet. All the nights I told myself she was happy when I knew she wasn't. I thought of that icy water, the laughter, the blood on her temple. By dawn, I felt nothing but calm. Across town, Garrett's world was falling apart. His contacts ignored him. His company's stock had dropped. Whispers were spreading like wildfire. He called Preston into his office, his voice shaking with rage. Your mother-in-law, he said through clenched teeth. She did this. Preston laughed weakly. Come on, Dad. She's just an old woman. An old woman who made one phone call that's about to destroy us. For the first time, Preston's face lost its smirk. He realized it wasn't a joke anymore. Garrett slammed his fist on the desk. Get the car. We're going to fix this before it's too late. But it was already too late. At that exact moment, Isaac's article went live. Drowned twice in the same lake, the 22-year story of Garrett Van Doren. Every detail, every name, every photograph. It spread faster than they could breathe. News outlets picked it up. Social media exploded. Garrett's office was flooded with calls. Reporters swarmed outside his gates. And on that same morning, I sat on Lena's couch holding her hand. "It's over," I whispered. Her eyes widened. "What did you do?" "Nothing," I said softly. "I just told the truth." Across the city, Garrett screamed into the phone, "Find that journalist. Now." But there was no one left to help him. His own people had already abandoned ship. That night, I received one last message from Isaac. "It's done. He's finished." I stared at the words for a long time, then whispered, "No, brother. It's just beginning." Because men like Garrett and Preston don't disappear quietly. They fight to their last breath. And I was ready for that fight. The storm had only started. And this time, it wasn't about revenge. It was about justice served cold. By the next morning, the news was everywhere. TV anchors repeated the same name over and over again, Garrett Van Doren. Business mogul, Lake Tahoe. Scandal, corruption, cover-up, murder. It was like watching a lifetime of arrogance crumble in slow motion. Every network showed the same footage. The gates of the Van Doren mansion swarmed with reporters, flashing lights, and security guards who didn't know where to look. The headlines were merciless. Millionaires' hidden crimes exposed. 22 years of lies. From power to prison. I sat in the small kitchen of my daughter's house, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound beside the TV. Lena sat across from me, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had gone cold. She was pale, but there was something new in her eyes, a quiet strength. "Mom," she said softly, "did you know this would happen?" I looked at her. I knew something had to happen. Whether the world saw it or not, that wasn't in my hands. Outside, the city moved like nothing had changed. Cars honked, people rushed to work, kids went to school. But for us, everything was different. Isaac called at noon. "It's chaos," he said. I can hear the panic in his voice through my sources. "The police are reopening the old case. The district attorney's office wants a meeting." "Are you safe?" I asked. He chuckled. "Eleanor, I've been hiding from people like Garrett since before you started collecting library cards." "I'm fine." I smiled faintly. My brother always laughed in the face of danger, but behind that laugh, I knew there was risk. Garrett Van Doren wasn't the kind of man to accept defeat quietly. Later that day, Lena and I went for a walk near the park. The trees were shedding their leaves, painting the path gold and red. The air smelled of autumn, sharp and sweet. She walked slowly, still recovering, holding my arm. "Mom," she said suddenly, "I saw the news this morning. They showed Preston." My heart tightened. "And?" He looked scared. I nodded. "He should be." We walked in silence for a moment before she spoke again. "Do you think I was blind?" I stopped and looked at her. "No. You were in love." She smiled sadly. "That's the same thing, isn't it?" Her voice broke a little, but there was no bitterness, only understanding. "I thought if I tried harder, if I laughed more, he'd love me." "You don't have to try to be loved," I said gently. "The right person doesn't make you beg for kindness." When we came home, my phone was already buzzing again. "Isaac." "Garrett's losing it," he said without preamble. He called a friend of mine in the mayor's office, offered him money, land, even stock. They all turned him down. He's a walking scandal now. "Good," I said. "Not good for him," Isaac replied. "Cornered men do stupid things." I knew what he meant. Desperation makes people dangerous. That night, while Lena slept, I sat in the dark living room with the TV muted. Images of the mansion flashed across the screen. Reporters outside, flashing lights. The soundless chaos looked almost peaceful. I whispered to myself, "You took everything from her, Garrett." Now the world takes everything from you. At that very moment, miles away, inside that same mansion, Garrett Van Doren stood in his office surrounded by chaos. Papers scattered, phones ringing. Preston paced the floor, face pale, eyes wild. "This can't be happening," Preston muttered. Garrett slammed his fist on the desk. "Stop whining and think. Dad, they're saying murder." "That's not some fine we can pay off." Garrett glared at him. "Everything can be paid off. You just have to pay the right person." But the problem was, for the first time, there was no one left to pay. He picked up one of his phones and called another contact. "Robert, listen, I need this story buried." The call disconnected. He dialed another. "Don't hang up on me, damn it!" But all he heard was silence. Preston sank into a chair, hands trembling. "What do we do?" Garrett turned toward the window, staring out at the cold lake beyond. "We do what we've always done," he said quietly. "We fight." The next day I was at the hospital delivering a thank you basket to the nurses who saved Lena. When I came home, there was a small envelope slipped under the door. No name, no stamp. Just one line written in neat, unfamiliar handwriting. "Stay out of this, Eleanor." I smiled as I read it. Then I tore it into tiny pieces and dropped them in the trash. Fear didn't work on me anymore. Later that evening, Isaac called again. His voice was low and serious this time. "They sent someone to my old apartment. 4 guys. They tore down the door." My heart stopped. "Are you okay?" "Of course," he said with a smirk in his tone. "They found an empty apartment and a pile of dust. I left that place years ago. But it proves one thing." "What?" "He's desperate. And when a man like Garrett gets desperate, he's predictable." I didn't answer. I just listened to his calm breathing on the line. "What happens now?" I asked finally. "Now," he said, "the story spreads." And it did. By morning, the internet was on fire. News channels ran special reports. People dug up old photos, old interviews. Former employees came forward. The story grew bigger with every passing hour. It wasn't just about one murder anymore. It was about corruption, greed, and power, gone unchecked for decades. Helicopters hovered over the property. Reporters shouted questions that no one answered. And somewhere in that chaos, Garrett stood in front of his mirror, staring at a face that no longer looked powerful, just old, tired, and terrified. Meanwhile, I sat quietly by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the gray sky shift. I should have felt satisfaction. I should have felt joy. But all I felt was calm, cold, steady calm. Revenge doesn't heal you. It just stops the bleeding. That evening, Lena sat beside me. She was scrolling through her phone, reading the news updates. "They're saying Preston might be arrested too," she said quietly. I didn't respond. I just looked at her and said, "You don't have to read it. You don't owe the past any more of your peace." But she kept reading. Maybe she needed to. Maybe we both did. By the third day, the police made their move. The arrests were broadcast live. Garrett Van Doren, in his tailored suit, walking down his marble steps with handcuffs shining in the morning light. Preston right behind him, head down, face pale. Cameras clicked like gunfire. The world finally saw what I had always seen. Not power, not class, just cruelty exposed. Lena turned off the TV and whispered, "It's over." But I shook my head. "No, baby. Justice isn't over until you're free." She looked confused. "Free?" "From them," I said. "From the fear they put inside you." That night she packed a small suitcase. Clothes, photographs, her grandmother's pendant. I helped her fold the last shirt. "Where will we go?" she asked. "Somewhere quiet," I said. "Somewhere with no lakes." We left before dawn. The road was long and silent, the headlights cutting through mist. As we drove, she leaned her head on the window. "I still love him," she said softly. "I know," I replied. "That's what makes you human. But loving someone doesn't mean forgiving what they did." When we reached the small town 2 hours away, the sky was turning pink. I rented a tiny cabin by the woods, Small, simple, peaceful. It smelled like pine and old memories. Lena sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the sunrise. For the first time in weeks, her face looked at peace. Then my phone rang. Isaac again. His tone was different this time, quieter, heavier. "It's done," he said. "What do you mean?" "They're both in custody. But Garrett, he tried to take the easy way out." My heart dropped. "You mean?" "He swallowed pills before they could transfer him. They got to him in time, but he's in a coma. Might never wake up." I said nothing. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel pity. Just silence. "In Preston?" "He's talking," Isaac said. "Trying to make a deal. Throwing his father under the bus." "Of course he is," I whispered. "He's his father's son." That night, after Lena fell asleep, I stepped outside. The wind was cold, carrying the smell of pine and wet earth. I looked up at the sky, the same stars that had watched everything from the beginning. I thought about all the years I'd kept quiet, the dinners I sat through, the fake smiles, the swallowed anger. I thought of that one phone call, the moment everything changed. Sometimes justice doesn't come from a courtroom. Sometimes it comes from a mother who has nothing left to lose. The next morning, I made coffee and stepped out to find Lena already awake. She was standing by the lake, a smaller, gentle one near the cabin. The water was calm, reflecting the morning sky. She turned to me. "It doesn't scare me anymore," she said. I smiled softly. "It shouldn't. This lake isn't like the other one." She nodded, watching the water ripple. "You know, Mom, I think I want to start over. Maybe find work here. Something simple." "That sounds perfect," I said. "Simple is good." For the first time in a long time, I saw her smile without pain. Just as we sat down for breakfast, the phone rang again. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. "Eleanor." The voice was deep, unfamiliar, but it sent a chill down my spine. "Yes?" "This is Detective Ron Healy, the old retired officer Isaac had spoken to. I just wanted to tell you, I'm sorry. For everything I signed back then. For what I helped cover up. I couldn't sleep after reading your brother's article. I wanted to thank you for giving me a chance to make it right." I closed my eyes, tears forming. "You didn't owe me anything, Detective. You owed the truth." He paused. "You're a brave woman, Mrs. Hayes." "No," I said quietly. "I'm just a mother." After the call, I sat in silence. The cabin was warm, the fire crackling softly. For the first time in months, I let myself breathe. But deep inside, I knew it wasn't the end. There was still something unfinished, something Isaac hadn't told me yet. That evening, I called him. "You're hiding something," I said. He sighed. "You always know." "What is it?" "Preston's deal. He's naming others. People high up. Judges. Investors. Even a senator. Garrett's empire wasn't just business. It was a network." My heart sank. "Will they silence him?" "Maybe," Isaac said. "That's why I'm sending everything to multiple news outlets tonight. If anything happens to me, the truth still comes out." I felt a shiver. "Isaac, promise me you'll be careful." He chuckled softly. "Careful doesn't get stories told, sister. Don't worry, I'm good at disappearing." The call ended, but his words stayed in my mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the cabin sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind made my heart race. At midnight, a car passed slowly down the dirt road. Headlights swept across the window, then vanished. I held my breath until the sound faded. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe not. I checked my phone, no messages. But when I opened my email, there was one unread message from Isaac. No subject line, no text, just one attachment, a photograph. It was a blurry image of Garrett's mansion taken from across the lake. The lights were off. The caption under it said only one line, "It's not over." The fire had burned their empire, but in the ashes, something darker was still moving. For days, I tried to tell myself it was over. Garrett in a coma, Preston behind bars, the newspapers filled with our story. Justice had been served. But peace was nowhere to be found. Lena and I lived quietly in the cabin near the woods. The mornings were slow. I made tea while she read by the window. The air smelled of pine and new beginnings. But sometimes when I looked into her eyes, I saw something else, a flicker of fear, a shadow that refused to fade. One evening, she asked, "Mom, do you ever think it's really finished?" I didn't answer. I stared at the horizon where the sun was melting into the trees. "Evil doesn't vanish, Lena," I said softly. "It hides. It waits." She looked down, tracing circles on her mug. "Then maybe it's waiting for us." Her words lingered in the air long after she went to bed. That night, I sat alone on the porch. The lake beyond the trees was calm, almost too calm. The moonlight turned it silver. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. I wrapped my shawl tighter, but the cold wasn't from the air. It came from inside me. My phone vibrated. Isaac. No greeting this time. Just his voice, quiet but sharp. "You were right. It's not over." I straightened up. "What happened?" "There's movement. Money transfers from Garrett's accounts. Offshore, Cayman, Zurich. Someone's trying to clean the trail. Garrett can't do it from a hospital bed. That means someone else is running his operations." "Preston?" I asked. "No," Isaac said. "He doesn't have the brains. He's locked up and crying to his lawyer. Someone higher. Someone who was always in the shadows." I frowned. "Who?" "I'm still finding out. But they're not just cleaning the trail. They're erasing people. The detective who reopened the case? Gone missing this morning." My stomach dropped. Gone? His car was found near the highway. Empty. Blood on the steering wheel. Silence filled the line. I could hear my heartbeat. "Isaac, stop digging." He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "You know I can't do that." I gripped the phone tighter. "Then at least tell me where you are." "No," he said simply. "If they find me, you're safer not knowing." "Isaac." But the line went dead. I sat there for a long time, staring at the dark trees, the wind whispering through the branches like secrets I didn't want to hear. I wanted to believe he was safe. But deep down, I knew my brother never played it safe. By morning, the news broke. A headline flashed on the TV in the small kitchen. "Investigative journalist missing. Sources link case to Van Doren scandal." Lena dropped her spoon. "Mom, that's Uncle Isaac." My throat felt tight. I forced myself to read the scrolling text. "Authorities are searching for journalist Isaac Hayes, last seen 2 nights ago near Sacramento. His car was found abandoned." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "You think—" I cut her off. "No, he's too smart for them." But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. The days that followed were heavy. I tried to keep our lives normal, walks in the woods, reading by the fire, cooking simple meals, but the silence between us grew louder. Every time the phone buzzed, my heart jumped. Every knock on the door made me freeze. Then one night, just after midnight, I heard it, a car engine outside. Slow, careful. It stopped near the gate. I moved to the window and peered through the curtain. Headlights cut through the darkness. The car door opened and a man stepped out. His face was hidden under a cap. He looked around, then placed something on the porch steps. When he turned toward the light, I saw it, a deep scar across his cheek. And then he was gone. I waited, barely breathing, until the sound of the car faded. Then I opened the door. A small brown envelope lay on the step, sealed with tape. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a single USB drive and a note in Isaac's handwriting. "If you're reading this, I've gone dark. Don't trust anyone. Play this only once, then destroy it." I closed the door, locked it twice, and turned off all the lights. Lena was asleep, her breathing soft and steady from the next room. I plugged the USB into my laptop. A video file opened. The screen flickered to life, showing Isaac's face, tired, unshaven, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. He was in a dim motel room. A map hung behind him, dotted with red pins. "Eleanor," he began, "if you're watching this, things have gone wrong. They found me once. They'll find me again. But I need you to know the truth." He leaned closer to the camera. Garrett wasn't the top of the chain. He worked for someone who funded everything, from his company to his cover-ups. That man's name is Thomas Vale. I froze. Vale? I whispered to myself. I knew that name. He was a senator, a friend of the president, a man whose face smiled from campaign posters and charity galas. "He's the one pulling the strings," Isaac continued. "He used Garrett as a front for laundering money and silencing threats. The drownings, the disappearances, all part of it. And now that Garrett's empire is falling, Vale's cleaning house." Isaac's eyes darted toward the door as if he'd heard something. "If I don't make it, send this video to the press. It's enough to bring him down. Don't wait. Don't a crash." The video shook. Isaac turned, shouting something I couldn't make out. The feed cut off. I sat frozen, staring at the dark screen, my heart hammering. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the laptop. Lena's voice came from behind me. "Mom, what's wrong?" I closed the lid quickly. "Nothing, sweetheart. Go back to bed." But she didn't move. She saw my face, the fear I couldn't hide. "Mom, what happened?" I swallowed hard. "It's about Isaac. He's in trouble." She walked closer, her voice trembling. "Then we have to help him." I looked at her, my daughter, who had almost died because of these men, now ready to fight for the brother I might have already lost. I realized something then. Fear wasn't keeping us alive anymore. It was keeping us silent. "No," I said. "We're not running this time." The next morning, I packed a small bag. Laptop, charger, the USB drive, a photograph of Isaac and me from when we were young. I left Lena a note. "Stay here. Don't go outside. I'll call you soon." Then I got into the car and drove. The road wound through forest and empty fields. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I replayed Isaac's voice in my mind, Thomas Vale. Every radio station I passed seemed to echo the same name, though they didn't know it yet. The man was untouchable. Until now. I drove for hours, heading toward the city where Vale's offices were. My plan wasn't clear. Maybe to find someone, maybe to hand the video to a journalist. I didn't know. I just knew I couldn't sit and wait anymore. Halfway there, I stopped at a diner. It was nearly empty. The smell of coffee and fried eggs filled the air. A waitress with tired eyes poured me a cup without asking. I sat by the window, trying to think. A man in a dark coat sat a few booths away. He wasn't eating, just watching me. When our eyes met, he looked away too quickly. My pulse quickened. I stood, left a few bills on the counter, and walked toward the exit. Outside, the wind howled through the parking lot. I got into the car, started the engine, and froze. A folded piece of paper was tucked under my windshield wiper. I stepped out, heart pounding, and unfolded it. "Turn back, Mrs. Hayes. You don't understand what you're walking into." No signature. No clue. Just a warning. But it was too late for warnings. I got back into the car and drove faster. The road stretched ahead like a dark ribbon. The radio played softly, static between old songs. Then suddenly, a breaking news alert cut in. Senator Thomas Vale has been admitted to St. Mary's Hospital following what sources describe as a medical emergency. Further details remain unknown. My breath caught. Medical emergency or cover-up. I turned the car toward the highway exit. The hospital was only 30 minutes away. By the time I arrived, the sun was setting. Reporters already gathered outside the emergency entrance, cameras flashing. I blended into the crowd, clutching my bag close. Through the glass doors, I could see security guards, doctors moving fast, and a tall man in a gray suit, Vale's aide, a face I recognized from the news. I stepped closer. That's when my phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. "You're late, Eleanor." My stomach twisted. I looked around, scanning the crowd. Dozens of faces. Cameras. Reporters. Someone was watching me. I could feel it. Another message came in seconds later. "Parking lot. Blue sedan. Alone." I hesitated. Every instinct told me to walk away. But I went. The parking lot was nearly empty. The blue sedan sat in the far corner, headlights off. I approached slowly, heart pounding. The driver's side window rolled down, and there he was. Isaac. His face was pale, thinner, a small cut near his eyebrow. But his eyes, those sharp, fierce eyes, were still alive. "Get in," he said. I did. My voice barely came out. "You're alive." He smiled weakly. "Barely. They tried to take me out 2 nights ago. I got lucky." "Vale?" I asked. He nodded. "Heart attack? Stress. The truth's coming for him faster than I expected." I took out the USB. "The video," he held up his hand, "already sent to 10 different outlets. It's out, Eleanor. The whole story." Tears filled my eyes. "Then it's over." Isaac looked out the windshield, expression unreadable. "Not yet." Before I could ask, he started the car. "There's something you need to see." We drove in silence for nearly an hour, leaving the city lights behind. The road turned narrow, then gravel, then dirt. Finally, we stopped near a clearing by a different lake, smaller, darker, hidden by trees. Isaac got out first. I followed. In the fading light, I saw it, a burned-out cabin. The walls blackened, the roof half collapsed. The smell of smoke still lingered. "What is this?" I whispered. "This," he said, "is where Garrett's people brought anyone who got too close. Journalists, whistleblowers, anyone who asked the wrong questions. They thought this place was forgotten." I stared at the charred remains. "Why are we here?" Isaac turned to me. "Because there's something under it." He crouched down, moving aside a piece of burnt wood. Beneath it was a metal hatch. Rusted. Locked. "Garrett kept records," he said. "Contracts, photos, bank statements, proof of everything. Vale tried to destroy it all, but I found the coordinates before they shut me down." I stared at the hatch. "You mean this could bring them all down?" "All of them," he said. "But we have to move fast." We pried the hatch open. The smell of damp earth rose up. A small staircase led down into darkness. Isaac turned on his flashlight and descended first. I followed, my hands shaking. The room below was small, concrete walls covered in mold. Boxes lined the shelves, marked with dates. I opened one. Papers, old photographs, USB drives. Isaac whistled. "Bingo." He turned toward me, a triumphant grin on his face. And then a gunshot. The sound exploded in the confined space. Isaac fell backward, eyes wide, blood blooming on his shoulder. I screamed, dropping to my knees. Footsteps echoed from above. A voice, cold, familiar, called down the stairs. "Eleanor Hayes, I wondered how long it would take you to find this place." I froze. That voice, I hadn't heard it since the lake. Preston. The past hadn't drowned. It had crawled out of the water, alive and armed. I froze at the sound of that voice. It slid down the staircase like a snake, cold and smug. Preston, my daughter's husband. The man who had pushed her into the lake and laughed as she sank. The man I thought was in prison. I turned toward the stairs. A faint beam of light from above cut through the dark. Dust swirled in the air. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it echo off the concrete walls. "Surprised?" Preston's voice echoed. "You really thought you buried me that easily?" I knelt beside Isaac, pressing my hand over the wound in his shoulder. His blood was warm and sticky between my fingers. He gritted his teeth. "He shouldn't be here," Isaac whispered. "He was supposed to be locked up." Preston descended slowly, one step at a time, a pistol glinting in his hand. His expression wasn't rage. It was amusement, the same twisted smile he'd worn that day by the lake. "Do you know what it's like," he said, "to lose everything because of a weak, jealous old woman?" He gestured at me with the gun. "My father in a coma. Our company gone. Our name dragged through the mud. And all because of you." I stood up, placing myself between him and my brother. My voice didn't shake. "You did this to yourself, Preston. You and your father. You destroyed everything." He laughed, a sharp, cruel sound that echoed off the damp walls. "You think you're some kind of hero. You think anyone's going to remember you when this is over. You're nothing, Eleanor. You've always been nothing. A meddling, bitter woman who couldn't stand to see her daughter happy." I clenched my fists. "Happy? You almost killed her." "She survived, didn't she?" he sneered. "You should thank me. I made her stronger." Isaac groaned, trying to sit up. "You made her broken," he spat. "And now you're about to make the same mistake your father did, underestimating the wrong woman." Preston turned the gun toward him. "You should have stayed dead, Isaac." Everything happened in seconds. I grabbed the nearest thing within reach, a rusted metal rod from the floor. As Preston aimed, I swung. The sound of metal against flesh rang out in the small room. He stumbled backward, the gun clattering onto the concrete. Isaac kicked it away. "Run!" Isaac shouted. But I didn't run. I lunged forward, grabbing the gun. Preston slammed into me, knocking it from my grip. We both fell to the ground, wrestling, our bodies hitting the damp floor. His hands were strong, desperate, pressing against my throat. I gasped, choking, my nails clawing at his arms. "You won't win." He laughed through gritted teeth. "You don't have the strength, old woman." I reached blindly for anything, and my fingers closed around a small, heavy object. The flashlight. I smashed it into his face. Once. Twice. The glass cracked. He shouted, blood spraying across my hands. I pushed him off, gasping for air. Isaac was on his feet now, his arm bleeding but his eyes blazing. He picked up the gun and aimed it straight at Preston's chest. "Don't," I said breathlessly. "Not like this." Isaac's finger trembled on the trigger. "He deserves it." "I know," I said softly, "but so did Garrett. And we didn't have to pull the trigger for justice to come." For a long moment, the only sound was Preston's ragged breathing. Then Isaac lowered the gun. But Preston wasn't finished. He laughed. A hollow, bitter laugh. "You think the law is going to save you? You think anyone will believe your story after what you've done? You're both accomplices. You trespassed. You broke into private property. You attacked me. You're finished." He stood shakily, wiping blood from his face. "You've destroyed everything. And for what? So you can feel powerful for one night." I looked him straight in the eye. "No, Preston. So my daughter never has to be afraid again." And then I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. Preston frowned. "What's that supposed to do?" I turned the screen toward him. The red light blinked steadily. "I've been recording since you walked in," I said. His face drained of color. Every word, every confession, every threat, all captured. For the first time, Preston looked truly afraid. His arrogance cracked like glass. He took a step toward me, but Isaac raised the gun again. "I wouldn't," he said coldly. Preston froze. His eyes darted to the stairs, calculating escape. Then, without another word, he bolted upward. "Isaac!" I shouted. But my brother didn't need prompting. Despite his wound, he ran after him. I followed, stumbling on the steps, clutching the phone tight in my hand. When we reached the surface, the cold air hit us like a slap. Preston was already running toward his car parked near the trees. I could hear the engine turning over. Isaac raised the gun again, his breath ragged. "He's not getting away this time." "Isaac, don't," I began. But it was too late. A single shot rang out. The car jerked. The back window shattered. Preston slammed on the brakes, his body lurching forward. Smoke began to pour from the hood. We both ran toward it. Isaac yanked the door open. Preston slumped against the wheel, blood spreading across his shirt. His eyes were open, wide and glassy. Isaac lowered the gun, his hands shaking. He was reaching for something, he said quietly. I swear, he was reaching. I looked inside. On the passenger seat sat a phone. Its screen glowed faintly, a text draft still open. They found the files. Burn everything. He had been sending it when Isaac fired. Sirens echoed in the distance. The sound was faint at first, then grew louder. Red and blue lights flashed through the trees. Someone must have heard the shot. Isaac looked at me, his face pale. We need to go. I shook my head. No, not this time. We don't run from the truth anymore. He stared at me, then nodded slowly. For the first time, I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years: surrender. When the police arrived, they found Preston's body, the open hatch, and the boxes of evidence beneath. It took hours to explain everything: the files, the recordings, the attack. They questioned us until dawn. Isaac was taken for medical treatment. I gave my statement calmly, clearly like someone telling the ending of a story that had already been written. By morning, the world knew again. Final chapter in the Van Doren scandal: air dead, massive criminal network uncovered. The footage from my phone became the final proof. The confession, the threats, the gun, everything. It was undeniable. Senator Vale was arrested 2 days later. Garrett died in his coma the same night, and the last of their empire, the money, the buildings, the name, turned to dust. When it was finally over, I returned to the cabin. The air smelled of rain and pine. The world was quiet again. Lena met me at the door. She didn't speak. She just wrapped her arms around me and held on. I buried my face in her shoulder and let the tears come, the first real tears I had cried since the lake. We sat together on the porch until the sun came up. Birds began to sing in the trees. The world felt alive again, and for once, it wasn't cruel. Weeks passed. Isaac recovered. He refused interviews. Let the story rest, he said. We've given it enough blood. He visited often, always bringing coffee and sarcasm. He'd sit by the fire and joke, I told you, little sister, graves never stay closed. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at the lake behind the cabin, his expression distant. I knew what he was thinking, that beneath every calm surface, there's a depth we'll never truly understand. Lena started painting again. Her hands, once shaking, now moved confidently across the canvas. Her favorite subject was always water, lakes, rivers, reflections. When I asked her why, she smiled softly. Because even water that once drowned you can still show you the sky. That line stayed with me. One evening, months later, I went down to the water alone. The surface was smooth, a mirror for the fading sun. I looked at my reflection and barely recognized the woman staring back. Stronger, older, free. I whispered to the water, "It's done." But in my heart, I knew it wasn't really done. Justice doesn't erase the pain. It only gives it meaning. Behind me, I heard Lena's voice. "Mom, come inside. It's getting cold." I turned to her and smiled. In a minute. I wanted one last look at the lake before I left it behind. The place where I had lost everything and found myself again. The wind rippled the surface. For a brief moment, I could almost swear I saw her, the reflection of that terrified young woman in the water, sinking beneath the surface. But when I blinked, she was gone, replaced by the calm reflection of the sky. I whispered, "Rest now, baby. You're safe." And I finally believed it. Weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address, just my name. Inside, a single photograph, me and Lena, taken from a distance. And beneath it, a handwritten note: "Some stories never end. I, Isaac, still out there. Still watching." I smiled and placed the photo on the shelf beside the books I'd unpacked, the same ones I once organized in that hospital library. Life had a strange way of coming full circle. As I closed the window that evening, the world outside was quiet. The smell of rain drifted through the air. For the first time in years, I felt safe. Truly safe. I thought about everything that had happened, the lake, the lies, the vengeance. I thought about Garrett, Preston, Vale, and all the others who had believed they were untouchable. And I thought about the one thing they could never buy, a mother's silence. Because when a mother's child is hurt, her voice becomes the sharpest weapon of all. It cuts through lies. It destroys empires. It burns evil to the ground. As I sat by the window, the rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. Each drop hit the glass like a heartbeat. The sound was soothing, steady. It wasn't the sound of sorrow anymore. It was peace. I whispered to myself, justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. And with that whisper, I closed my eyes. The story was finally over. Or maybe it wasn't. Because somewhere out there in another house, by another lake, someone else was laughing. And maybe someday another mother would stand where I once stood, quiet, furious, unbroken, and whisper into the darkness, do what you do best. And so the story ends. For now. But remember, true justice isn't always what we expect. Sometimes it's delivered quietly, without fanfare, and sometimes it's something much darker than we ever imagined. What do you think? Did Eleanor's actions give her the justice she deserved, or was it simply revenge? Was there another way she could have made sure the truth came out? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious to hear what you think about her journey, her decisions, and the shocking twists. Do you agree with what she did? Or would you have handled things differently? If you love this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another heart-stopping, jaw-dropping tale of hidden secrets and untold truths. Also, turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when the next gripping story drops. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.